وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. I apologize that I could not encompass all the discussion is going on. Anyway, if someone summarizes for me, what do you want to do and what is your message to pass to the people? Because myself, I could not, understand everything is spoken over there. Anyway, the things understood that you are wanting to make a certain point that Ummah should unite and do the Ramadan in one day, and they should try to find out the moon, and every place should have their own site. This is what I understood. And last point I got that you said there is no proof for one sighting. Yani if some places, some people, they see the moon, it is not approved by the Sunnah or by the Sharia. If you say there is only one sighting, it means every area, every country should see the moon. Do you mean that? No, I'm not sure about it.
Okay, I think there's 2 points made here. I think the first point you made was the main purpose here is to revive the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's the main purpose here. It's quite clear. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that do not fast until you have seen the moon. The main purpose here, and this is I think the title of the whole program here, is to establish the Sunnah of moon sighting. So what we're after, the main purpose here, is that on the 29th of every month, the Muslims in this country go out and look for the moon. That is the main purpose. We believe that if lots of people, if most people go out to look for the moon, then that will be accurate and completely correct. Because if one person says something, then there's a chance of error. But when thousands of people, I've never been to China, but thousands of people tell me China exists, I know they're telling me the truth. If one person tells me they've seen the moon, there's a chance there could be an error. But if we all revive the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and we all go out to see the moon, then inshallah it will establish accuracy in the country. That's the purpose here. The other question you said was, I think based on what that we shouldn't base it on one country in particular. In Sharia, if we look back to what the fuqaha have said, they've said something quite clear, that there's two main views in terms of moon sighting. The first is ittihad al-matalib. That means that we can take a sighting from anywhere in the world. So the world is like one plane. So anyone gives us news, reliable news, that they've sighted the moon, we can accept that. But that teaching doesn't say that we fix one country. So we don't fix Australia, we don't fix South America, we don't fix India, we don't fix Saudi Arabia. That Rasul says, if anyone sights the moon in the world, and we get the news quickly, properly, accurately, then we can accept the sighting. That's one view of the fuqaha. The other view of the fuqaha is ikhtilaf al-matalib. That means there are different horizons. That means that, and this is based on the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where he says, لِكُلِّ بَلَدٍ رُؤْيَةٌ. For every city, for every place, they should go out and sight the moon. So every city, and that's why that's why when I explained the dates in Mecca and Medina, how on one occasion, it was different dates. They didn't go checking what Mecca did. They followed on the first of the month, on the 29th or the 30th of the month, they went to sight the moon. If they saw it, it was the first. If they didn't see it, it wasn't. They didn't check it with anyone else. So these are the two principles in Sharia. Either we follow global sighting, ittihad al-matalib, that means that any reliable sighting in the world, we accept it. Obviously, it's got to be brought to us by Muslims, and then the news has to be accessible. The other principle is ikhtilaf al-matalib, which is different horizons. In addition to this, there is a Shafi'i usul, which states, and Allama Shami rahimahullah mentions this, Ibn Taymiyyah mentions it as well. Allama ibn Sukki, rahimahullah, he mentions as well that when people in the east have sighted the moon, then necessarily people in the west will see it afterwards. So it means that the moon first appears in the east and then west. So if we're in the west and there's a reliable sighting in the east, then we can accept it, not the other way around. Now so I'm going to summarize what I've just said. 2 points. The purpose of the program is to establish the Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We believe that the Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is part of the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If people follow that system, then it cannot contradict any astronomy. It cannot contradict any science, because it's the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we follow the Sunnah, then what we do will be correct in terms of that system. That's what we're after. That people follow the system and the Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the way they do that is the way recommended to us by the ulama. The ulama have given us this criteria. They've approved this criteria, the one we've spoken about time and again. The idea of the 29th of the month, we go and sight the moon. The moon is a sighting. We look out for, is there any reliable sightings elsewhere that we know are accurate? If that's not the case, then we have a 30-day month. That's the system we're after. That's the system we're promoting. We're not after degrading anyone else. All we're after is to upgrade, to uplift, and to revive the Sunnah.
Second question is, which way you suggest us to follow? We do the Ittihad al-Matali' or we go for the Ikhtilaf al-Matali'? Which one you suggest us to follow?
We're following, as I've explained clearly, we're following Ikhtilaf al-Matali' in that we're looking out for local sightings. We're encouraging everyone to look out for the local sightings. But we're in a country where things sometimes, where for 3 or 4 months of the year, it's not always possible. Therefore, we will accept, once we've seen the moon, once we've looked for the moon, if we don't see the moon on the 29th, we will accept reliable sightings on our east. This method, although it's not completely Ittihad al-Matali' and it's not completely Ikhtilaf al-Matali', the ulama have approved it for the situation we're in based on our climate. What you've got to understand in the UK, because we're above 46 degrees latitude, our conditions, our atmosphere is slightly different to those countries on the equator. Based on that, and this is what the job of the fuqaha and the muftis is, for them to look at the conditions and say, actually, this is the best scenario for you. This is the system which is the closest to Sunnah for you. If we were to follow just local sighting, because I'm assuming that's your question, that if we don't see it on the 29th, we take 30 days. If we were to do that, what we'll find is, after a few years, we may be 4 or 5 days off the rest of the world. That could easily happen. Because as Brother Khamuddin mentioned, that in a year we have 6 months that are 29 days, 6 months, 30 days roughly. If we were to follow 30 days throughout, based on the difficult weather conditions, we could end up being way off the rest of the world. To avoid that, the muftis have considered that, the fuqaha have considered that and based this criteria on that. Anyway.
Okay, Jazakallah. We're going to move on to the next question, please. You can ask afterwards.
Just like you finish it.
Please, we have to do this. We're behind schedule already. You can speak privately after this conclusion.
This is the problem for all meetings.
If you want, brother, if you
by anything.
No, brother, if you want to write down your question,
Half an hour, 1 hour and a half you discuss. We don't have the chance to
okay,
discuss
tell me your question, brother. What's your question?
about that.
What's your question?
We just close your written and go out.
No.
So how can we benefit? We need to understand from you.
Okay,
I ask you that give me clear direction.
Okay, what's your question?
What do you do to follow the Ittihad al-Ru'yah direction? What we go follow the Ikhtilaf al-Matali' direction?
I'm asking, I've answered that and basically
you say that you don't concentrate on this one, or nor you concentrate on that one, right? As you understand from you.
We give preference to Ikhtilaf al-Matali'. We go for local sighting, we give priority to that. If that's not possible, then we look at Ittihad al-Matali'.
So you give priority for the Ittihad al-Matali'. Ikhtilaf al-Matali'. And go for the Ittihad al-Matali'.
We consider
if it is not possible. Yes. Oh. So my view is, if we go for that, then problem will not be solved.
Okay.
It will create more and more and more problem within ourselves. So I think someone need to discuss elaborately these things, because you give a lot of points. I have written down here. If you have some other resources or written work, if I can have it, I go for it. And I need to discuss this point again. And I need to understand them and discuss for the brothers here that are sitting. So now the closing time, brothers saying there is no time. We have to shut down. So
what we're saying is that we have to give opportunities for others to ask and answer questions as well. Inshallah, if you want to talk after the session, there'll be a private session for you to ask a question. Inshallah, if you want to give a presentation, I'm sure the Masjid will be happy to give you a presentation also. But we will ask the next question.
Assalamu alaikum. According to you, 15 Shaban is Saturday, but according to the rest of you, 15 Shaban is Friday. Please explain to us.
First thing on that, I think I'll explain that, is that it's not according to me, it's not according to any particular scholars. The question here is in terms of sighting of the moon, when is the 15th of Sha'ban? What we found on the 29th of Rajab, it was impossible to sight the moon anywhere in the world. On the 29th of that was the situation. What we found was, if we look around the world, to this extent, that the 15th of Sha'ban in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh will be on Sunday. 2 days difference from what you're saying, the majority of the UK. Now the question here is I'm not asking for you to measure what we've said against the rest of the UK. All I'm asking you to measure is what we say against the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. On the 29th of Rajab, we went to look for the moon. Based on that, the judgment was on 15th of Sha'ban. Now that criteria is based on the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which goes above any majority, any views of anyone else, or what people do. Because people can be wrong. The ahadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the words of the Quran can never be wrong. So that is what we follow, that is the system, and that is why the 15th of Sha'ban, according to this criteria, based on the Sunnah, will be on Saturday.
Can I add a point, brother, here? According to the pre-calculated Saudi Qura calendar, they went to check the moon on Friday 1st of July in Saudi Arabia. And they have about 10 Hilal committees there. And I personally have met many of them in Abu Dhabi last year. And I also telephoned them and asked them if they have seen the moon anywhere in Saudi Arabia. And they said none of the 10 committees were able to see it, even with telescope on that Friday. And sometimes they do get claim that some Bedouin near Riyadh has sighted it, so that may be considered or accepted by the court in Saudi Arabia, even though none of the official Hilal committee has seen it. And the reason they would quite easily accept that, because in their humble effect, a man, a woman, or a slave say that I have seen the moon. That is sufficient for this to start the month. Not they don't even have to give shahada or a declaration. So they have a system, and I understand from the writings of Mufti Taqi Usmani that there is a basis of that, but it is a weak basis. But nevertheless, I asked the question to my contact, so what is the decision of the Supreme Court about beginning of Shaban? He said, we don't know if they have made a decision, because obviously they only declare their month for Ramadan and Eid only. And they would not ask them, because I think it's a very sensitive issue, because the media, the public are always criticizing the authority for making a wrong decision. And so there is no official decision of starting the month other than what the Qura calendar says, which is if the moon has set a minute after the sun, then the next day begins. And that is the calendar that anybody who's saying Friday is 15 Shaban is following. You are not following the calendar based on visibility or sighting. You are following Saudi government civil calendar they produce for administration purposes. And I have personally discussed with the author of the Qura calendar, Dr. Fayaz Al-Hargan. He is in university in Riyadh, and they are trying to negotiate with the other parties to see if they can upgrade that to a visibility model. But at the moment, it is based on an invisible model, and therefore, what you are following according to the rest of the world, this is incorrect. It's not an astrological world, because the world perhaps doesn't know what is visibility of the moon. They are just following a pre-calculated calendar for civil purposes. So anybody who's following that calendar, then for them, 15th of Shaban night will be on Friday. Anybody who following based on visibility, it will be Saturday. It is not his calendar or my calendar. It is the system on which Allah Ta'ala has based his criteria for beginning the month.
Okay, next question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Musaul Laban and I'm from Oxford. First of all, I'd like to thank you for giving us this time and a very important time of yourselves. I think it's probably better if, because you must have done years and years of research to come up with this slideshows and literature, if you could put it in a package.
We've got that, and we'll leave that here.
Yeah.
It's in a booklet here.
If you could put it in a package, maybe charge for whatever the cost is, and then maybe we can pick it up and study it over time. Obviously, it's too much to grasp just in a couple of hours. So that's my suggestion, is that you can put it in a package and put a cost on it, whatever the cost is, and maybe people can then study it in their own time.
You can use the Wifaq al-Ulama website. All the information is on the website, so even if you don't have the booklet, if you go on to wifaqululama.co.uk, all the criteria is there, and it's very simple to understand. Today was just to give an overview, and yes, you rightly said it takes time to digest all of the information. And really to simplify it, as was emphasized again, that the emphasis is laid on establishing people to go out. And this is not a practice. People have ignored it for many, many years. So we want, as we are living in a different geographical location, and as even there is a change in our climate, it was not as it used to be maybe 20 years ago, where criteria was established. People have established, and for many years they were following that. And then it has been reviewed and found that it does not meet the condition of establishing a month with certainty. And that is the reason, one of the reasons why Wifaq al-Ulama is established, that you do first the local sighting, and if it is not sighted in this country, you take the sighting of those countries on your east. إذا حصلت رؤية الهلال في البلاد الشرقية لزمت رؤيته في البلاد الغربية دون عكس. So it has to be a sighting on, if there is a sighting on the east of the country, it has to be sighted also on the west, as the sunset was later, and not the other way around. That is why ikhtilaf al-matali' is not used, it's only used to take reports of sighting on the countries on our east. And it does not go against the Quran, and nor does it go against the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. If you don't mind, I'm going to propose if you do the time table. What we'll do is we'll do the time for the presentation, because some people came specifically for that and have to leave as well. So we'll do that.
My request, Brother Fulke just wants to make one
Just a quick question, brother.
question, Charles. Can you close this one? There's a lot of people who need to ask questions.
Quick.
No.
What we'll do is
Briefly
we'll
question.
time table. We'll come back to you.
I was looking this morning. According to the Saudi, there says moon sighted on the. Have a look. Hezbollah has announced that the moon sighting seen in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, one thing to remember, you have many, many sighting reports. We have to embrace, establish that does Islam, you see there are three opinions with regard to this astronomical data. There are those who rely completely on it. We don't use that as a criteria. There are those who only use this astronomical data as persuasive, or not to establish the month, but only to negate the false sighting. So if somebody, you see your shahada, as was explained, somebody claimed a sighting, the testimony was there, but it goes against the logic and reason. The question is, does Islam, does it go against the logic and reason? Islam embraces it. So if astronomical data is accurate, conclusive, qat'iyyun, we only use those which is qat'i and established. We will not use astronomical data which is zanni and not clear. That is the reason we say.
Have you seen in here Shaban moon sighted? The moon sighted in Shaban in United Kingdom? Can you tell me? month of
The moon was
Shaban.
not sighted in the UK.
Where is sighted?
So when the 29th of Rajab came, it was sighted on the east, and one of the countries was Morocco.
Morocco.
It was sighted, yes.
I understand from your Waqfu ulama and then it was 29. Rajab was 29.
Rajab was 29. Yes.
Both sides.
So we started the 1st of Shaban on the 3rd of
ulama
July.
and Waqfu ulama is 29 Rajab. But one day is made different. Your site is third day, and theirs is second
Let me
day.
explain that actual thing there. Basically, that's a report by Hizbul Ulama.
It's a ulama, yes.
Yeah, I know Hizbul Ulama very well. We live in
That's
the same area. It says on that statement. I read that
protecting
statement
them.
last night. That statement says on that statement. Let me explain so everyone understands that statement. That statement says that many people in Saudi Arabia cited the hilal. That's what it says there.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
That's what it says on the
That's right, yeah.
website. Now, first thing on that is Prophet Muhammad did mention that in Saudi Arabia, the 10 hilal committees went out all over Saudi Arabia, and they went out to sight the moon with telescopes in their centres. The 10 hilal committees have reported back, and they've said that none of them saw the hilal. Now the question here is, this is the important thing here. Now 10 other people, or a few other people may have said that we've sighted the moon. Now the question here is, and this is where data analysis comes in, it's when someone brings news to you, do you accept it always? Someone ran to the masjid and says, "I saw it right now." Do we accept it or do we check it? Now the problem with those sightings mentioned is that first, they go against what the Hilal committees have said. They've gone against that those 10 different committees in the country, they did not see the moon. Secondly, it goes against the data available to us that tells us exactly where the moon will be, when it will be, the size of it. It goes against those two things. As a basis for that, Waqfu ulama will reject those few sightings.
Thank you. Thank you. You
Is that correct?
reject it. You reject
We
their
reject
ulama,
it based on two things, based on the data and based on the Hilal committees. The two separate things. Both rejected based on sighting. Experienced astronomers couldn't see the Hilal. Therefore, that's a base of rejection.
I understand from...
Just one point.
There's a large ulama.
Hizbul Ulama is not part of Wifaq Ulama.
No,
It's totally separate.
Maulana, what I'm trying to say is that there is also large ulama is accepted this sighting as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, so now just please understand the reason for the differences. This criteria we establish every Islamic month. Now if you start the month of Sha'ban incorrectly, what may happen, you will create problems for the beginning of Ramadan. And that's why there's been problems in the past. In Saudi Arabia, established sighting, go to the YouTube, we had an interview with one of the leading scholars, Sheikh Al-Luhaydan and Abdullah Al-Munay. It is on the YouTube. If you type in the name and you are in Abu Dhabi, they've made it very clear. 3 months for the whole year they do sightings, naked eye sightings. The rest of the year is totally on the Qura calendar, and Qura calendar is not based on visibility. It is only based on moon set after sunset. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes doesn't matter. And that is the reason why if moon is 4 minutes on the horizon, you can bring 200 people to tell me there is possibility for them to sight it. Astronomers say too much of solar glare, it is not possible. At least 20 minutes, half an hour should pass at least. And even the age of the moon is only used to make us understand that all those years that have passed, did anybody sight a moon that was 4 hours old, 5 hours, 7 hours? It has not been found. So that is why we use all of this data to remove the errors and establish our month with certainty. Shaban starts incorrectly, it will affect Ramadan. If Ramadan is start 1 day earlier, it will affect the beginning of Shawwal.
Can I have another question from the time is very short.
Yes.
We will, inshallah, the ulama we will have a separate meeting for the mosque committee again with them. But we need to carry on.
Can I quick question?
Brother, please, no. I'm going to give a hand over to Brother Munir. Just mention your name.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. My name is Shafii Haq. In terms of viewing of, moon sighting, when we in a geographical location, we can see our with the naked eye. When we see that moon sighting, there is nothing problem within the community and the Muslim community in general. But the problem is within the expert of who is explaining when should do the Ramadan and when should do the Eid. The problem, again, it's extent. When we don't see, when it doesn't happen, the moon sighting, we within the present location. We go for the next nearest location or the reliable source. And then we get divided which source is the most accurate. It comes a lot of explanation in the community who is taking the decision and the ulama who has to take the decision. They get divided. So what is the perfect criteria we should adopt to accept the sighting of the nearest or nearest geographical location?
Okay, now what's important there, that's a very good question, mashallah, because it's obviously the question here. Now on the 29th, we will go and observe the moon, that's accepted, that we have to do, that's the sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the question is, when we haven't seen it, then which country is reliable, which isn't reliable? What we find is with that is, the reason why that question isn't difficult is because there's a sunnah, there's a way the world works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the world such that the moon appears in a particular place first, and then it moves in a westerly direction. So it doesn't really matter which country we're following, because if we're looking at countries in the east, and when we look at the first country that will sight the moon, then everyone will be united on that, because it's not something which is difficult astronomically. Nowadays, with the amount of, with phone, with internet, with all these facilities, we can easily get that data. The world is quite accessible. So actually, what we're saying here is we've got a central moon sighting committee. We've got Wifaq ulama. We have contacts where we receive regular faxes from different organisations around the world. From Morocco, we will get emails, faxes, data. From South Africa, we've got contacts there. From lots of different locations, we have contacts. So this example of a fax, yeah, from Morocco, and that fax came in. I think it was about 9:30. Came in, didn't it? It came in. Yeah, it came in very early. So we have contacts in these places. What we're after is for the community here, in the same way that in Batley the community have done there. In South London, lots of Muslims have done there. Lots of places around the UK are doing is take advantage of these resources, of these contacts. Because we can, inshallah, give you that information very, very quickly through the internet, we've got Twitter accounts, in text message services, so we can give you that information.
I was getting asked, if we don't see moon naked eye, rather than looking for a reliable source, or even if we look for a reliable source, that means we still head back to you to take your decision on board. But what will happen, what I said, the expert is divided in the issue. There is other people, they are telling the take opposite what you are saying.
So what we're asking,
that's what I mean, because we don't want to get into the wrong decision. We need to have the right decision, what is beneficial for whole community.
Right. The question, I think, roots from the starting of Shaban. So the starting of Shaban, if it was started according to the Saudi Qura date, then your 15th of Shaban will be Friday.
I think I've understood from his question. His question is, there's two bodies of ulama. Now, when there's no sighting, which body should you follow? Is that what you're trying to say?
Correct. Because of when an explanation comes in terms of the decision,
what we need
to different angles.
You need to invite the other people, like you have kindly invited us, and put this question to them. What is their basis, method of establishing their information? Now, looking at this data, I'm just highlighted on that day, Friday, July 1st, when Saudi's Qura date says the following day is the 1st of Shaban. The moon was only 7 hours old. Altitude was 1 degree on the horizon, and it set within 7 minutes of the sun. All the experts in the world unanimous that is impossible to sight the moon based on facts. Now, if the people of Hizbul Ulama, and by the way, the Hizbul Ulama is made by only 2%, but they have a good marketing by which they think they are leading the whole country. But it's just 2%. Now, if their information is correct, which is Qura date, Saudi's Qura date, then any location west of Saudi Arabia should be able to have also given you that report. Now, there is no country in the whole world was able to give us that report on July the 1st. We were able to have seen a 7-hour-old moon, which has set within 7 minutes of the sun. There was no people in the whole world who were able to do that. Morocco looks for the moon from 278 points. Our ulama have visited them and looked through the ministries of our Gulf ministries procedure, and they have found they follow the Maliki